Well, it's 10 o'clock, so good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you to the parent meeting. We've held a couple of these previously, about a week and a half ago, and I anticipate holding some more next week, trying to get the accurate information out to parents regarding their return to school plan. For those of you I have not personally met, I'm Brian Walmsley, the superintendent, and today I'd like to go over a couple items regarding the back to school plan. I currently have everybody on mute. At the end of the session, I'm going to open it up for question and answers. So if you could just be patient with me or jot your question down towards the end, we can answer them all together. In front of you on your screen, you should see the short agenda that I put in place. I want to start with talking about just a brief overview of the executive order, which has started this process. Talk a little bit about the Michigan Safe Schools 2020 Return to School Roadmap, which is the document all schools have to follow. Then the crux or the main part of our conversation, I believe, is going to be in the proposed COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan that will be presented to the Board of Education and recommended for approval to start that outlines our school year. In that conversation, I want to talk to and share with you what to expect, both from safety and operational protocols for both in-person and virtual students, as well as for staff. What does instruction look like? We're going to be talking about two options for families, and it's really based on your comfort level and your family's preference. And then have a conversation, and I'm going to show you where it is in the document. It's not if, but when the district has to address a possible COVID case in a student or staff. Maybe it's a confirmed case that we have to deal with, or contact of a staff member or a student that was in contact with a confirmed case, and the process for students and staff to return to work and so forth. So this is our agenda. I want to start and let's begin with the executive order. So a second to close this. I want to make sure I got the right screen shared. There we go. Okay, I am going to first start off by asking parents if you have any questions, concerns, any issues. You are always welcome to call me, email the principals. We are here to help you and work with you through this challenging and really uncharted times. I want to refer parents to the website because all the information is being placed on the website. If you have any questions about documents or stuff that the board's approved or our plan, it's on the website. There are two spots you can get to it. One is at the top here, Return to Learning and Coronavirus Update, or it is down here. So when you click on it, up pops various documents, and it's constantly being updated. So I want to first start with the executive order, which started this process. On June 30th, Governor Whitmer issued the Executive Order 2020-142, which basically laid the framework or foundation for schools to begin planning to open school up in the fall. I'm not going to read the Executive Order 2, but I want to point out some pieces of it. At Section 2 is really where it talks about schools will need to begin to develop what's called a preparedness plan. And that's what you'll be referring, that's what the board will be approving on Monday, or pending approval on Monday. And it's actually, the official title is COVID-19 Preparedness and Response Plan. And in this plan, we have to address how schools will operate in phase 1, 2, and 3, which is schools are shut down. There is no in-person learning, it's all virtual. Phase 4, which allows for in-person learning as well as virtual, which is where we are currently as a state. We are at phase 4. Phase 5, which is similar to phase 4, but fewer restrictions. And then phase 6 is where we were at this time last year, at school as we know it in a normal sense. And I just want to highlight in phase 1, 2, and 3, this is what it's required. It requires us to close school buildings. It requires that only certain people are allowed in the buildings to continue or implement the preparedness and response plan. It requires food service to be preparing food and distributing food like we did in the previous shutdown. It talks about licensed child care providers and services if there's a need that we continue to operate them. It suspends after-school programs such as athletics, clubs, inter-school activities. Again, this is all phase 1, 2, and 3. And it also requires that we offer a mode of instruction that is different than in person. And we're going to talk about that today in terms of the virtual option that we're launching this year. It talks about we need to continue, as I said, food distribution like we did back in March, April, May, and June, and as we are currently doing now. And the last one says to continue paying employees while redeploying them. It makes sense that there are going to be certain positions that if schools close, we wouldn't necessarily operate, so we would redeploy those staff members to another part of the organization to continue what we are required to do. When you get into Section B, this is really the crux of where we are right now, which is we are in phase 4. And these are in the order that we are required to do. In phase 4, we are going to be required to wear facial coverings basically at all times except for eating and if you have a medical condition in these areas. On buses, for students that are in pre-K up in the pre-kindergarten classrooms, preschool classrooms, it's only in hallways and common areas. All staff in the classrooms. Students in grades K through 5, as long as they're self-contained, only need to wear the mask in the hallways and common areas. It's optional in the classroom. Students in grades 6 and above, it's required to wear a mask at all times, hallways, classrooms, common areas. It prohibits indoor assemblies that bring students together. So we have to restrict assemblies that we might have done or operations. And so you probably are thinking, well, what does that have to do with right now as opening school? How many assemblies might a school have? Oftentimes a school will bring down, like at the high school, the 9th graders and give an orientation and so forth. We can't allow multiple classes to come together. We've got to do it in a different fashion. You may have had a PTO fundraiser that does a kickoff for a chocolate sale. We're not allowed to have indoor assemblies such as that. In the return to school roadmap, which I'm going to go over, we have to implement the required protocols such as hygiene, cleaning facilities, athletics, screening, testing and protocols, busing students and transportation. And then finally, the executive also says if we are moved from phase 4 to phase 5, we need to again continue. How are we going to operate in phase 5? And the last part is if there is something that is strongly recommended or recommended in the document, the district has to identify if it's not going to be able to implement that strongly or recommended item. So, again, I encourage you to look at the executive order. Make sure this is what every district in the state of Michigan is following. From that executive order, there was guidance that was put out by the state, and it was a large committee that was put together, and it was called the Michigan Safe Schools Michigan 2021 Return to School Roadmap. And in this roadmap document, it talks about in each phase what districts are required to do and begin planning for, what they are strongly recommended, and what they are recommended. In the beginning part of this document, you'll see who is involved in this, putting this together. I'm going to focus on phase 4 right now, which begins on page 22 of the document. The first section, I believe it's around page 15, talks about protocols for phase 1, 2, and 3, which is basically school is closed and we are virtual. As I said, I'm going to go down to page 22, which is where the phase 4 begins. I'm not going to go over the document completely, but I want to at least make you aware of how the district's plan was developed. And it was developed from this document. You can see in the document there's a section called personal protective equipment, and then you'll notice there are certain requirements and there are certain things that are strongly recommended. Again, as I show you the district's document, you'll see these items are in our document and with the response as a district, how we're going to operate and manage that. I'm going to premise this that this has to be a partnership. In order for us to be successful, you as a parent, myself as the superintendent leading this district, and all the staff, we have to work together. And there are situations in here, whether your political beliefs or internal beliefs operate one way or the other, we have to follow and abide by these rules as outlined by the state. So we're going to look for your support, as well as you can expect our support on your end, especially in the virtual setting. This section talks about hygiene. It talks about how we're going to space and move in the buildings. Our buildings, no building in the state, no school building for that matter, was ever designed to accommodate a pandemic and having kids be 6 feet apart. So one of the recommendations in the document is you're going to see that kids it's recommended that they are 6 feet apart in the classroom. That is impossible for us to do. Even if we were able to do it and able to hire as many teachers as we want, physically, we do not have enough classrooms to spread kids out. So one of the things you're going to notice in our document, and you see it's here under strongly recommended, that teachers should maintain 6 feet of distance between themselves or arrange classrooms that are 6 feet. We are going to do our best to give as much space between the staff and the student while trying to educate. We are a school system. We are a people organization. That is how schools operate. We interact, we engage, we talk, we give hugs to kids in the elementary schools and so forth. So that's our normal procedures. We're going to try our best to keep it normal as possible, but it's going to be a little challenging in these perimeters. So I encourage parents to look through this document. These items are in our plan, which is where I'm going to go next on that aspect. But it talks about how we're going to screen students and staff. We have been working with the Macomb County Health Department. Richmond is considered in Macomb County, even though we share with parts of St. Clair. So our primary health department that we work with is Macomb County. Though we will work with St. Clair if we have situations of families that are in the St. Clair County. So as you can see, there's various aspects of how we respond to students. All of them require us to work with the health department if there's any positive case, if there's any suspect of a positive case, if there's any how students and staff return. We follow the protocols outlined by the health department. And then finally, as you go through, it talks about athletics and cleaning and so forth, and busing students. And then it gets into the instruction. So let me talk a little bit about what we've done as an organization, and let's talk about our plan. On the website, you can actually see the draft plan that has been, and I labeled it draft because the board will be reviewing this plan on Monday. The graphic approved is just simply with the expectation that when all things are done, it's approved. It does not mean it's approved right now. It is still pending the board's approval. The executive order outlines that every district must have their plan approved by their local board, or if they're a charter school, board of directors, by August 15th. After August 15th, every school district must submit their plan to the county level. So for us, we would be submitting, for Richmond, we would be submitting it to Mr. DeVault, who's the superintendent of Macomb Intermediate School District. And the county will send all 21 districts for Macomb into the state superintendent as well as the Treasury Department, which is, we did not send it to the Treasury, our plan, continuity of learning that we had to develop in the spring. It was only sent to the state superintendent. The order has been changed that now it goes to Treasury. So let me give you an overview of the plan. You see in the plan, you will see on the top headers various colors, red, orange, yellow, and green, which represent the phases that we are in. So as we're looking at this document and you see columns under that, that represents if we're in phase 4, this is how we're operating, if we're in phase 5. It gives an introduction of kind of the overview and all the documents that we had to work with. Since July 20th is when we officially, after we got all the documents from the state and got the requirement, you can see on here we have pulled together a team to really have a a large conversation about how we're going to operate. Our previous shutdown, I believe, and I'm very proud of our staff, was outstanding. From the perspective of, on March 12th at 11 o'clock at night, we were told schools were shutting down beginning March 16th. That Friday the 13th was somewhat traumatic. We didn't know what was going to be happening with the district. Schools across, we didn't know when we were returning. We knew it was going to be a 3 to 4 week window. And then around spring break, end of March, the governor closed schools for the rest of the year. So literally overnight, our staff had to rethink, change how we operate, and provide instruction to the best of our ability. Was it ideal? I don't think anybody agrees that it was, but I believe it was the best that we could do in the short time frame. I am extremely proud of the plan that's being recommended by the board from the perspective of this is a collaborative effort among everybody. We took the survey results that were asked of parents back in early June, what their thoughts were on returning to school, what their thoughts were about changing the start date. Would they use transportation and so forth? We took those results and began developing a plan that we felt would meet the needs of all families. And that's what I believe is unique about Richmond's plan. It's not a one-size-fits-all for every student. It's an option for families. This plan allows us to, if we are moved to phase 3, to seamlessly go into phase 3, which is virtual learning, and I'll talk a little bit about that. As you go through the preparedness plan, there's some legalities that the executive order says we have to do, and these are right from the executive order. Here's the table of contents, so if there's a specific area you want to look at, you can go to that specific area. This is again overview about what happens in phase 1, the viral status, 1 through 3, excuse me, phase 4, phase 5, and phase 6. Expectation of how to keep communities safe, how the school communities keep safe, how schools operate. You can see here in phase 1 through 3, there is no in-person instruction, it's all remote. Phase 4, 5, and 6, there's in-person instruction, but there are restrictions in 4 and fewer restrictions in 5. So I'm going to go over just the basics on it. So you can see on the plan, most of the content is in phase 4. So as you read this item, in the black here, it talks about facial coverings will be worn. And in the blue is Richmond's plan. And it goes through and addresses every single item, not only in the executive order, but also in the return to school roadmap. In-person learning, we are requiring all staff to wear face coverings. That could be face shields. That could be face masks. We are requiring pre-K through 5 students, if possible for teachers, we have clear masks. And I'm going to talk about some of the PPE that we have ordered, the personal protective equipment. Students in grade K-5 requiring a mask in common areas and hallways, but not necessarily in the classroom unless the student opts to. 6 through 12, it's a mask all day long, except, or facial coverage, excuse me, all day long, except for when we're eating at lunch hour. So when we talk about personal protective equipment, what has the district done to date? We currently have, or will be picking up this week or arriving within the next 2 weeks, we have over 70,000 disposable masks for students and staff that are designed for upper elementary school through high school. We have over 60,000 disposable masks for lower elementary school. We have purchased, and through the partnership with the ISC, they have also purchased equipment for all school districts for Clorox 360 disinfecting machines to allow every classroom to be disinfected on a regular basis, nightly and throughout the day, lockers, etc. We have over 3,000 face shields, both for students and staff, so that if a mask is not working, we can provide face shields. We have over 300 gallon-size hand sanitizers with pumps that we will be issuing to all classrooms. In March, with the need at that time, we went through the emergency response personnel asked all schools, since we were closed, could we pull out any hand sanitizer and so forth, because they were in desperate need of it. So Richmond, like every district in Macomb County, helped our first responders and so forth. So we are replacing those. We will have over 200 half-gallon buckets of wipes that each bucket contains 400 wipes that we'll also be issuing to staff to be able to wipe down stuff within the classroom, desks, computer keyboards, etc. We have installed plastic barriers around secretarial desks. Again, we are a people organization, so we're trying not to make this look like an asylum, if you will, but a school system that we can still operate. But we also need to protect not only our community, but our staff. So we've installed protective barriers around secretarial desks. We have purchased 30 thermal scan units that will be installed on buses as well as in the entrances to the buildings. So we will do a temperature screening as people enter our buildings as well as they enter on the buses. We have currently on hand, and it should be arriving in the next week or two, depending on the time frame of the delivery, 160 refills for all the hand sanitizers that we have throughout our buildings. If you recall, a couple of years ago, our Girl Scouts troop came to the Board of Education and proposed that we put hand sanitizers outside every classroom and offices. And kudos to those young ladies who were thinking ahead and trying to be prepared, because I believe we are the only district in Macomb County that has that ability to have a hand sanitizers that convenient for families or for students and staff. Those are just some of the PPE that we've done. We've got gloves, we've got portable thermometers that if we have to take screenings for potential cases and so forth. So on this plan, you will see our response. And again, in this particular column, it's talking about personal protective equipment, what's required. As you go through, you'll see sections that are saying strongly recommended. And we are everywhere we can do this, we are doing this. We are trying to protect our staff and family regarding both in the strongly recommended as well as recommended column. And then you'll see some of the items now, if we're in phase 5, these are the items that are recommended. So you can see as it changes depending on the phase we are as an organization. You can see some of the items in our plan are listed in red. Those are the items that we identified that we are not following. And for this particular case, we do not offer a program for under age 2. So for that recommendation, we are not following that because we don't have the program. But you will see in here that there's a recommendation of students being 6 feet apart in the classroom. If you choose in-person learning, we cannot have 6 feet apart of students. We can move desks and we can space them, and we can provide barriers, but we identify in our plan that that's one that we would not be able to do because of the physical layouts of our classrooms and the limited number of classroom spaces we have. Again, as you go through the plan, it talks about every aspect. This is, I believe, a very thorough plan. It was a lot of hard work among the individuals, a lot of conversations about how we're going to operate, and so forth. And I'm just going to scroll down again. As you see, you'll see spacing and access, how we move and around the building. We are creating one-way hallways with tape down the middle to try to keep traffic flowing in one way. So you'll see blue tape down many of our hallways where possible. We are putting signage around, and if you go to the end of the document, you will see various signages that or signs that we will be hanging up from do not enter the bus if you have these symptoms, which will be on the bus doors, which will be our first screening for those students that are riding the bus. We will have signs that are on the front doors that anybody coming into our building, both students as well as visitors and staff, do not enter if you have any of those symptoms. We have hand washing signs and how to prevent the spread of germs. We will have signs on the floor to remind students to stay 6 feet apart to do their part, such as in the lines for lunchroom. When you sit in the lunchroom, there will be signs on the table because we're spacing students out in the lunchroom. Normally at the elementary school, we can fit about 16 students on a lunch table, basically 4 on a bench. Sometimes the kids like to squeeze an extra one there because they want to sit with their friends. We are limiting that to half of that, so 8 to 10, so it's basically every other spot on the lunch table. So students still will be able to sit with friends and eat and have conversations, but they will be spaced out. Our lunch tables will take up the entire lunchroom. At the high school, we will actually be running 3 lunch periods now. We will be having an A, B, and C lunch to split the high school population into thirds. And we will also be using the mini gym as a second lunchroom to put lunch to space students out in the high school. Drinking fountains have been turned off. We do not want to share a common drinking fountain where the virus can spread, so you will see signs by the drinking fountains do not use. When possible, we have turned the water off. In some cases, the drinking fountain water line supplies the water line to the bathrooms sinks, so the faucets cannot be turned off. In classrooms, we will keep the sinks, particularly in the elementary schools that have sinks in them. Those will continue to run because we want students to be operating from that angle, from using washing their hands and so forth. So this gives you an overview of the plan. In the back of the plan, I just referenced, it talks about our procedures and protocols that the Macomb County Health Department went over, and I'll talk a little bit in a few minutes about how we respond and operate if we have a confirmed case, a possible case from a staff member, a possible case from a student, and so forth. So let me talk about what to expect for you and more. Close this out. I'm going to stop sharing for a quick second. So Richmond Community Schools is offering an option for parents. We are planning in-person learning for our first day of school, which is on September 8th, Tuesday. We are, right now, there is approximately 147 people, almost 150 as of today, that have requested the online option. Once the board approves the plan, then we will be in contact with those families to talk about what that online option looks like for them and how do they register and get logged in. So let me talk about what instruction looks like in the district. In most cases, when the district chooses to go virtual, they have maybe a specific teacher or two, or depending on the size of the district, that just teach virtual students. In our conversations, one of the things that we believe as an organization makes Richmond the place people choose is that it is a family. People feel connected to the teacher, they feel connected to the kids, it's a close-knit community. And what we did not want is students that choose a virtual option to feel or be perceived as being isolated from their classroom peers. So the question then became, how do we make sure online students are part of the classroom where in-class students are? And so I'm going to share with you in a second. So what we did was we are installing an interactive camera system in every classroom. And this is what it looks like. And this particular picture that you have in front of you is Mrs. Ranger's classroom. So in the center of Mrs. Ranger's classroom, and every classroom in the district, there is a 350-degree camera. There's about 10 degrees that the camera doesn't capture. But basically, if I'm a student at home, I have a live feed or a direct viewing of the teacher in the classroom. So if Mrs. Ranger, and I work very closely with Mrs. Ranger and so forth, so I feel comfortable sharing with her example. If she starts her day off as welcoming students and taking attendance, she would do that like she did with classroom students. And she would also take the attendance of students that are online and virtual. And the system that we're using to interact through the camera is Microsoft Teams. And many of the teachers use Microsoft Teams in the previous shutdown. Some teachers use Zoom. Our district standard now is Microsoft Teams. So if you're choosing a virtual option, there are basically 2 platforms that you will be utilizing. One is Schoology, which is a county-wide system, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the training for not only parents and the students regarding Schoology. Schoology is the platform that teachers and students who are virtual would send their stuff to and from the teacher. So for instance, if I have an assignment that I'm giving, a teacher would upload that assignment to Schoology, the student at home would download the assignment, do the assignment, and then re-upload it for the teacher to see. In the previous shutdown, we mailed a lot of packets. It wasn't necessarily a two-way interaction, it was more of a one-way. Here's the packet, worked on it. Some teachers did some assessing via Zoom and kids showed them the work. So if you're a virtual student, Schoology is the platform. Within Schoology, there is a link for Microsoft Teams. So when you click on Microsoft Teams, the student would have a live feed of the teacher through the camera that I showed you on this particular case. So if Mrs. Ranger is up here in front of her whiteboard teaching and talking about two-digit addition, the students at home are seeing exactly what the students in the classroom are seeing. This system allows the students at home to interact with the students in the classroom. So for instance, in the elementary school, we are putting a new sound system in. In fact, they are actually working today, and they'll be here next Saturday to finish all of the system. The teachers in every classroom will wear a microphone. That microphone is what captures the voice of the teacher, and the students at home as well as the students in the classroom hear that. If a student at home has a question, in Microsoft Teams, they do much like we do in Zoom. You raise your hand or a button you press, or you may even just wave to the teacher. And the teacher would then say, okay, Miss Johnny, what's your question, or whatever the student's name is. And the student at home is speaking, and the kids in the classroom can hear that conversation. The teachers have the ability to partner students up. So if I was doing small group instruction in the classroom, and let's say we're studying government policies and so forth in Mr. Ladd's government classes, an in-person classroom could have a laptop sitting next to them with the virtual student on that laptop, and they can have a conversation about what's going on in the classroom. This is completely unique. No other district has this system. And the whole point of this system was to allow virtual and in-person students to still be part of the class. One of the things that will be presented to the board is we are asking parents that if they commit to a virtual option, that you commit to it in 5-week intervals. So for instance, if you start the school year off and you want to do virtual and your student is interacting with students in the classroom, and come 5 weeks later, that student, your student says, you know, I want to go back to class, or as a family, you decide that probably is a better environment for your child. Things happen and now you have to go back to work and you have childcare issues that you don't have the options of being at home. Those students who are virtually would go into the same classroom they were assigned day one with in person. So all the interaction they've done with their classroom, it's seamless. The beauty of this system is that when, and I won't say if, but when we have a situation where we have a student who's been in contact, someone has to be self-quarantined for a period of time. You know, so long as they're physically able, they can be in quarantine at the home and still be learning in the classroom. I cannot thank our teachers enough. On July 14th, we have about 83 teachers in the district, and almost 60 of them volunteered to come in and look at this system. And the excitement that teachers were sharing with me, and the excitement of the possibilities that this system has for their instruction, I believe is really what's going to make Richmond's online option state of the art and really looked at. And we are already being looked at by other districts who want to see how do we do this. We have 100% support of our teachers union. I cannot thank Local 1, who represents our teachers union, as well as Mrs. Ranger, who is the teachers union president. They have been backing and supporting this process completely. We still have some work to do on a letter of agreement with them, which we are very close, and I believe in the next day or two, we should have that finalized or early next week. But I can't thank them enough. The administrative team, when they have come in early. Normally they don't start till their year till the middle of August. They came in early, beginning in July 20th, and have hit the ground running and trying to implement and put all these procedures and protocols. So this is the virtual option that we're offering families. So I just want to, at this point, I want to share with you another option you have. So you might want to say, well, how do I get more information on kind of what to expect and so forth, or if I forget things that are talked about. If you go again back to the website, click on the words in person. If I'm an in-person student in the district, this is what I would be expecting to do, what the expectations are. So at home, if you're getting ready to come to school at home, our expectation for parents is that you're doing a daily screening on your kid. You're making sure that they don't have fevers, the fatigue, body ache, all the signs and symptoms of COVID-19. We are begging parents, do not send your child to school if they have a temperature over 100.4. These are all health department and CDC guidelines. If you are on the way to school as a parent or a student, if you ride the bus, any student age 12 and under is going to have a parent or guardian or responsible adult at the bus stop. And here's why. We are required to do screenings of students before they get on the bus. We're going to check and ask, do you have any of these fevers? We're going to take a temperature check to make sure there's no fever over 100.4. We're going to make sure students use hand sanitizers before they get on the bus. If they forgot the mask that's been issued to them, we're going to issue them a mask to wear on the bus. And weather permitting, if everything goes well and they're on the bus, the windows on buses are going to be down. So it's usually colder, so students will need to make sure they have coats or sweaters in the morning because it will be cooler riding the bus than normal. If you're bringing your student by car or by walking, we are limiting the time buildings are open. At the high school and middle school, buildings will not open until 7:30. At the elementary school, buildings will not open until 7:40. Now, if you need childcare is open. We are still running childcare as is before, during, and after school. The only exception on the buildings open, we have some high school students that have a 0 hour, so they begin their day around 6:35-ish. If you are driving your student, please park in a parking spot. Do not park on grasses. Do not park on roads. It's for the safety of everybody. Parents walking their student from their car to the school, they're expected to follow social distance as they're waiting outside in the lines where we designate students. We're expecting social distance. We'll be marking on playgrounds or where kids line up, markings on the sidewalk to try to keep that 6 feet. And in phase 4, non-district employees, which are parents, volunteers, are not allowed in buildings. So once kids enter the buildings, we will do a screening at the building, which I'm going to go over, and they'll go in the class. So we are limiting who has access to our buildings for possible, obviously, spread of the virus. Walking is very similar. Again, drop-off times, modeling social distancing, and non-district employees are not allowed in the building. Once you get to school, what would you expect? Well, students, before they come into the building, we have those health temperatures that are mounted on the walls of the entrances. We also have some that are on tripods. We will be taking temperature scans of everybody walking into our building to make sure there is no temperature of 100.4 or higher. We are doing a self-assessment to make sure none of those symptoms, whether I walked, drove the bus, or by car. All staff are required to wear facial covering. Desks will be spaced out in the classroom. There will be some areas when we're teaching where desks may be pushed closer together, so long as we have face guards and face shields and personal protective equipment. In-person students, if I'm in person, there is a possibility that their image, their picture, may be captured on the virtual in-class cameras. These are not shared with anybody but individuals in the classroom. But as that camera moves on the ceiling, there is a possibility that that camera, that image will be captured. Facial coverings are required to be worn by all students grades 6 through 12. Grades K-5, it is optional in the classroom. In the lunchroom, lunch tables are spaced out in the lunchroom. 2 to 3 students per bench is the maximum. We are not filling the lunch tables. We're attempting to stand 6 feet apart while waiting in line. It is our intent to try to manage that, but if you can imagine, if there is 100 first graders going into class, oftentimes the first grader may not remember to stand 6 feet apart, and so we will have cues and stickers on the floor to remind them, but we're trying to create that spacing. And then facial coverings are to be worn to and from the lunchroom and common areas, but they do not have to wear them when they are eating. In the hallways and common areas, I may be traveling from my classroom to art, or I may be traveling from my classroom to the lunchroom. Facial coverings are to be worn by all students and staff K-5. Attempt to maintain 6 feet of social distancing in the hallway, spacing out lines. This becomes a little more challenging for staff, especially younger grades, to manage the students in the hallway, but I have every faith that our staff can do this. Staying to the right of the hallway, trying to keep traffic as one-way flows in the hallway. We will have blue tape lines going down the center of our hallways to kind of remind students to stay on which side of the line. In common area, drinking fountains have been turned off, and all students are encouraged to bring their own water bottles to school if they need water. There will be some drinking fountains available, such as in the classroom, which will be wiped down, and protocols will be put in place after using. And then additional cleaning, just as a point of reference, we are moving some of our evening custodians to the day so that they can clean and disinfect light socket or light switches, doorknobs, all the common areas kids touch throughout the day and staff. Disinfecting common areas, so between classrooms, being able to wipe down and disinfect lockers, playground equipment, after use in playground equipment, to go out there and spray and disinfect the playground equipment, as well as classrooms may be cleaned depending on the schedule during the teacher's prep time rather than in the evening, so that we can maximize the sanitation efforts as well as minimize any spread of the virus. The second document you'll see is I'm a virtual student. What would I expect? Virtual students, well, we will register you. If you already registered, you pretty much have all the paperwork in. There's just a couple more things that we need to actually label you as a virtual student. You're committing to 5-week increments. You will be issued district resources, such as if you are a virtual student and need a laptop, we will issue a laptop. Textbooks, anything that's required for you to learn at home, we will be issuing that the district would normally issue for in-person students. Education Development Plan, EDPs, it's required for virtual students that they have an EDP. I'll talk a little bit on that in a few minutes. At home, this is probably where most of my questions have been coming. What does virtual look like? How much time is my student on the computer? Our expectation, and I'm going to speak in general terms here because it's a little different for each grade level and each course, but our expectation is students log in as they would if they were a student in Richmond coming to school in person. They remain in that class. So for instance, if I am a high school student or a middle school student that changed, I would log in to my first hour class. The teacher takes attendance. The teacher does the instruction. At some point, the teacher will give an assignment for the students to practice what they've learned. At that time, the virtual student may go to a side point and work on the assignment. The teacher in the classroom may, through Microsoft Teams, say, Johnny, how you doing? You need any help? Or if the student needs help, they can talk to the teacher directly. When they're done with first hour, they log out of first hour, and then they have about a 5-minute break, and then they log in like they would to second hour. Teacher takes attendance in second hour. So if you are a virtual family and your student did not check in, you can expect to have the automated robocalls from PowerSchool that your student was absent that hour. Again, the student for pretty much a secondary, middle school, high school student is pretty much follows their day. The expectation is they're being taught by the teacher. They're being, the assignments are being given by the teacher. The student is returning the assignment via Schoology to the teacher for assessment. Elementary, as we look at the grade level, it's going to look a little different. The expectation is that they're still available the entire school day, but there may be times that they're turning off the computer and walking away. And I'll give you an example. And I'll use Mrs. Ranger again. Mrs. Ranger starts her day and she takes attendance, and maybe there's a morning work activity on the board. After the students do that morning work activity, she may have them come to the carpet to do calendar. So the camera in the classroom would move to the chair where they do the carpet calendar and zoom in. She does calendar and carpet with the students in class and virtually. Maybe she reads a book with them, and the students at home are hearing the book and seeing the pictures. At, let's say, 8:30, she starts a reading lesson, and she does a whole class instruction. And then oftentimes they will do centers in the elementary school. So Mrs. Ranger may post on the website, or excuse me, on the screen, that while we're doing in class or doing centers, if you're at home, these are the things I'd like you to do. And maybe they're learning about the letter S, and one of the activities is find 10 items in your house that start with the letter S. And again, I'm probably being too simplistic, so I apologize, but this is off the top of my head an example. While the students, during that time, the virtual students can kind of disconnect with the classroom because they're doing an activity assigned by the teacher. The teacher is still available if the student has questions or the parent has questions. The in-class students would do their centers. Mrs. Ranger might say, okay, come back at 10 o'clock and we're going to start math. So the expectation is at 10 o'clock, math comes back on. Mrs. Ranger teaches the math assignment as well to the in-person and virtual students. The assignment is given, and again, the teacher is there to help both the in-person and virtual student. At 10:45, she said, we're going to go take a recess break. So they would the virtual students would take a break. The in-person students would go out to recess. Maybe at 10:30 is lunch, so at 10 or 11:30 is lunch. So she'll say, okay, we're getting ready, we're going to wash our hands and get ready for lunch. Come back at 12:15 because we're going to start our afternoon. And so during that time period, the student is expected to have lunch at home, as well as wash their hands and maintain the hygiene. So again, it varies by classroom, but in general, we are expecting students to be part of the classroom for the school day. The teacher is expecting them to be interacting when they're interacting. You can see on this chart all rules and regulations regarding the handbook follow. I mean, if a student's misbehaving, we follow the protocols of the handbook and address the misbehaving if they're doing it virtually. Following the class schedules and calendars that the teachers will give. Utilizing Schoology and Microsoft Teams. That's our platform. Be respectful and understand that classes may be recorded because teachers have the ability to record the classes and post it. So if you're teaching a high school class, Algebra 1, and maybe you're learning about the quadratic formula, the ability is there that they can be tape recorded and watched at a later point. As you keep going, what to expect in the classroom. You're going to be connected through Microsoft Teams. You're going to see a camera moving around the classroom. If I'm Mr. Ladd and I'm up lecturing to start the classroom, the camera is going to be focusing on Mr. Ladd. But let's assume he goes to a map that's on the wall because he wants to show about the Revolutionary War in the 13th colony. The camera will move in the ceiling and zoom in on the map so the students at home will see what the students in the classroom are seeing. Virtual students may be paired. We may be assigning Sally, who's in the classroom, with Johnny, who's virtually. Okay, you two work together and we're going to work on this project. And so they would do that through Microsoft Teams. There is a virtual interaction of the sound for both the teacher and the students are able to hear. We are concerned with the social and emotional health of our students. This is a trying time, and we know there are kids that are going through issues. Social work services continue. If they are eligible for Title I, they would receive their Title I services virtually. If there's an IEP, the IEP will be reviewed and, if necessary, revised to accommodate a virtual student. We will be doing a screener in the first 2 weeks, a social emotional screener conducted by our social workers to get a baseline data of where our kids are at, because we are very conscious and want to make sure that we have the support networks in place for students that are going through some trying times. Especially for some kids, this is very scary. Stuff they're seeing on the news and so forth in their world is very scary. If you are a virtual family, we are offering you a breakfast and lunch option, much like we're doing now. If you want breakfast and lunch and you are we are doing it at a week's time, you can pre-order. Orders are due on Monday. They will be picked up. You would have to pick up the package. It would be 5 days of breakfast and 5 days of lunch from the school. If you are paying for breakfast, it's $1.75 per day. If you're paying for lunch, it's $2.75. If you are receiving free or reduced lunch, your free and reduced lunch cost applies. But we will have a breakfast and lunch option for virtual families. So that gives you a little bit about the instruction. You know, if you talk to teachers and administrators about that, you probably get a sense in their voice. There is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of anticipation for this, trying to create a virtual students for families, a virtual option for families. And finally, the last part I want to talk about is what's going to happen when we have those cases. And I would strongly encourage everybody to review the plan. The last couple pages talk about, from the health department, the current guidance. If a student is suspected of having COVID or symptom, in every classroom, in every building, excuse me, there is a designated quarantine room that students who are potentially have the virus would be quarantined and sent home. And there's expectations of contacting your physician and possibly being tested. If someone has tested positive, there is a possibility that a classroom, students within the classroom, a whole classroom, potentially a whole grade, would have to move to a virtual setting in quarantine. There is a possibility, depending on how many, that the whole school could be shut down and gone virtually. And the reason why we chose this virtual option, and I'm going to show you in just a minute, is we are preparing all kids to participate in a virtual option depending on the situation. And so let me share with you that document right now. So you have that. Again, all of these are located on the website, so I encourage you to go to the website and see them. But there is a document about what to expect. Our plan is Blue Devil Days as we know it are being canceled this year. We cannot, in phase 4, have people in the building, large quantities of people. So our plan is, when Blue Devil Days was normally going to happen on August 31st, 1st, and 2nd, that would be the time that we would work with students that opt for a virtual option. In other words, that's when they would come in. We have them in small groups by grade level, where we would issue laptops and all district required materials. So if you need the Algebra 1 book, or if you need the anthology reading book from the grade level, we will issue all those books. Our expectation is the student and one parent is at that meeting, because here's what we're going to go over. We're going to talk about the technology and the software the district has on our technology to monitor the activities on that computer, that laptop, excuse me. We have the ability that if inappropriate stuff is being written in emails, inappropriate sites get through. Firewalls are, you know, we try to maintain the latest firewall, but someone always has a way of getting around it. But any of that inappropriate is reported to the school that we deal with. And you may have gotten a call this past year from a principal regarding that. So we want to talk about to the parents about that. We want to talk about the etiquette. If you're a virtual classroom and the kids in the in-classroom are seeing you, there's some etiquette. In other words, you know, you need to dress up, you know, appropriately. You are at school. We want to talk about internet safety and potential cyberbullying that anything virtually automatically brings on, and how we are utilizing the positive behavior support programs in each of our buildings to support virtual learning. We're going to talk about to the parents what emotional and social emotional supports you have as you're monitoring your child at home. At that meeting, we are going to make sure every parent and student has the ability to access their OneDrive, which is the way students receive documents. They can send emails. Their calendar appointments are on there for Microsoft Teams. We are going to make sure all virtual families can access Schoology, that they can actually log in. We're going to make sure that they know how to use Teams and the basic functions of Teams. We're going to provide you the at-home tech support. We have a hotline that we have created. We have an online virtual. We have the ability now to remote into laptops off-site to help fix problems. We're going to talk about the instructional boot camp that virtual and in-person students are going to go through, and that's the next step. For pupil accounting rules and regulations, you have to sign a virtual learning agreement. And then for families that have internet issues, if internet is available, the district has hotspots available that we could be issuing to make sure all students have internet. Now, I say this with a little caveat because our district is a little over 40 square miles collectively. And when you look at the areas of our district, there are certain spots that internet reception does not happen. So we're going to have to work with families on what would that look like. Where would we do that? So that's the August 31st, 1st, and 2nd for virtual families. At that point, whoever's choosing virtual. The first week of school for all kids. And this will be designed specifically at the building level when teachers and administrators officially come back on August 31st when they do their PD. But we are going to train all students in the norms and introductions on how virtual and in-person students collaborate. How are we going to talk with each other, both if I have virtual students and in-person students? We're going to review that virtual learning agreement that virtual students have to sign. We're going to issue laptops to all students. We're going to run sessions both virtually with virtual students and in-person students where everybody is accessing Schoology, where everybody's accessing and running instruction by Microsoft Teams, so that all students know how to use the systems. And then we're going to talk to the students and show them about not only support networks that they have, but also, again, etiquette, internet safety, cyberbullying, what to do. And then the final week, or the week after that, is when we are going to be moving Blue Devil Days. And Blue Devil Days will be virtually. So the expectation during Blue Devil Days is the students and their parent sign in like they would if they were a virtual student to Schoology, all the stuff that a teacher would normally give out at Meet the Teacher Night, their schedules, maybe a newsletter, would all be uploaded to Schoology so parents can see how they access it. The teacher would be on Microsoft Teams with their classes so that the teacher, parent, and student can all interact virtually. Our goal is by September 16th, our parents, our students, and I know our staff will be comfortable that if we have to move to phase 3 virtual, it is a seamless move for everybody. The tentative schedule, and again, this will be published the week of the 24th. We send out our welcome back packets, and all of this information will again be in that welcome back package. But for high school and middle school, we will run the hours. You log in just as a teacher or student would do virtually every hour. For elementary school, we're going to run multiple sessions. So if you have a kindergartner or first grader and you want to get into both teachers, if you want to see the STEAM teacher, the art teacher, the music teacher, you will have an opportunity to be participating their Meet the Teacher Night, Blue Devil Days, as well as the classroom teacher. So again, I can't preference this enough about families going to the website. We're putting the information, any letters that I'm sending out to the community will be posted there. Our platform for notification is through School Messenger. We will send email notifications. If you do not have an email or you have not been getting them, when the secretaries come back beginning August 17th, or shoot the principal an email, send an email to the principal. We want to make sure that the correct email is in the system. So when you get that form that talks about your emergency numbers and contact, please make sure that email is correct on there. At this time, I've gone over kind of the whole plan. I haven't gone into word for word, but I've gone over what to expect from Richmond as we prepare for learning for the 2021 school year. I'm gonna allow participants to unmute themselves. So if you have any questions, if you can unmute yourself and ask away, I will try to answer as many as I can. If I don't have an answer, I will get back with you and post the information on the website. We have started a Q&A document, a question and answer document that was from our previous parent meetings that we held. So that document is it's in the review stages right now. I need to sit down with the administrative team next week and go through to make sure everybody's on the same page. But at this time, does anybody have any questions?
I have a quick question. I know you had mentioned it previous. A lot of information. It's been very helpful as a parent and as a teacher, all of your information, so I do appreciate that. My question is, I did do the little survey for virtual, because that's what we are deciding to do. And I did call, I do believe, I'm not exactly sure the person that it said to call, but I did call them and leave a message. My question is, when will I be hearing back about the virtual? Like, I know you had said there will be a packet being sent out. When will that be sent out?
The plan is right now, I'm making the assumption the board's going to approve this back to school COVID-19 preparedness plan on Monday night. On next week, anybody who has submitted a form online, they will get an email from me that will start outlining the virtual and what the options are. So for instance, they'll get next week's email is an introduction about here's what to expect. You'll probably get one the following week, say, okay, now these are the forms that we're gonna need. The flyer that I shared with you about the virtual, when you get your equipment and so forth, that will be coming in email. So after the board approves the plan, anybody who submitted an email will get an email from me initially about preparing to go virtually.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem. Other questions?
I have a question for you. The masks that are provided by the schools, are those required to be worn, or can a student wear their own mask that they bring in?
It's a great question. In the plan, students can wear their own mask that they provide. If it is a washable mask, the expectation in the plan, and it's written there, is that the requirements say that students will wash their mask daily at home. The way we have written is we are expecting as parents, because you obviously want the best for your child, we're expecting you to wash them at home. We're not going to ask the students, did you wash them or not? The expectation is we're working together. So we are issuing all students, we got Blue Devil masks here. I don't know if you can see them. We issued them to the graduating seniors. So all students will get those. It is a washable mask. We also, as I said, have disposal if students forget their mask or something happens. We know, dealing with elementary kids are going to sneeze. Kids are going to mess up their masks. So we're going to have to replace them through the day or put them in a Ziploc and send them home to be washed. But the question you asked about, can they wear their own? Absolutely. They can wear their own mask.
Okay, another real quick one, and I'll let somebody else jump in. Is how do you monitor the temperature scanning at the doors? I understand, I heard you mention it, and we had an automated system at my company that would basically trigger an alarm. I don't know if that's something similar to what you're doing, or just curious how that's being monitored.
Let me grab the box. Hang on 1 minute. I'm going to put it up to the cameras closely. It is a system that looks like this. They are mounted on the wall and on tripods, and students would either take a forehead temperature or a wrist temperature. It is just a screening device. It is not the end-all and be-all. We're just trying to take screening temperature. We will have a staff member assigned at all entrances. The high school opens at 7:30 and the elementary opens at 7:40. There will be a staff member assigned at that door, and we will have 2 scanners going. It's a very quick, you walk up and it gives basically a red and green light. If something signals that a student's temperature is over 100, we'll ask to retake it. We also have portable thermometers that you can measure up to their forehead. We'll do a second check because there is an error rate. I mean, it's not 100%, but that's the anticipation. If there is a staff member assigned at every entrance that will be taking monitoring the temperature. Students walk up, take the temperature, and keep going, as long as everything is under 100.4.
I have a quick question too. As far as the online, is there a deadline to sign up for the online before school starts? Do you guys have like a cutoff time?
The cutoff time for the first 5 weeks is the first Friday after school starts, which is September 11th. Now,
Okay.
I say that because we would like as many online ready to go and identified by August 28th, so that the week of August 31st, we can make sure laptops and textbooks and everything are ready to give you to start day 1 on September 8th. We are anticipating that there may be families that choose in person, and things can change in a week. I mean, in 1 week we could all be virtually, and this is kind of a moot point, but if you come to school on the 8th and you at that point decide, so I want to do virtual, we are allowing through that Friday, like we do for kids to change classes and so forth at the secondary level, that Friday would be our cutoff, and we're asking you to stay in the virtual for 5 weeks. And basically every 5 weeks you have an option of moving back to in-person or moving from in-person to virtual, depending on
Thank you.
your situation. No problem. Other questions?
I have one about the buses.
Yes.
Are they going to be every other seat? Are they going to be separated, or is it going to be just like it has been in the past?
That's a very good question, and I realized when you said buses, I did not bring that up. So let me talk about transportation. Currently, right now, we cannot and do not have the ability to space kids out on the buses. So for buses, as we normally run buses, students would have a screening done at the door, temperature check, hand sanitizers, issued masks, windows down. We're running the buses. One of the things that is going to be proposed or talked about to the board is, do we want to institute a 2-tiered bus system? So what does that mean? Basically, for middle school and high school, school would start at 7:30. Elementary would start about 8:30. And so we would have fewer kids on the bus if we did a 2-tiered system. And the concept behind that is, if we're in phase 4 and phase 5, we would keep a 2-tiered system. If we are moved to phase 6, which is business as usual, we would go back to a 1-tiered system.
Okay.
As you can expect, a 2-tiered system has a cost, because you're basically, in essence, doubling the payroll cost, because bus drivers are running 2 runs in the morning and 2 runs in the afternoon. We're almost doubling fuel costs. The mileage on the buses, you're doubling the mileage, so you're going to have more oil changes and repairs that are scheduled for the buses. So there is a cost that the board has to consider. And as you may have heard, I know it was on last night's news, at least on Channel 4 and Channel 7, we don't know what we're getting for the 2021 school year yet. The state has not approved a budget. We made some assumptions as a board and superintendent, and the board did approve a balanced budget. But any new costs, the board's going to have to consider that if we right now, there's no funding coming from the state for increased costs for the 2021 school year. Now, if we are a 1-tiered system, I'll go back to your question, with the anticipation that we will have some families that will choose virtual, there will be some fewer kids on the bus, but the buses will still be running on a 1-tiered system with approximately, I think some buses are 60, 70 kids capacity. If we are on a 2-tiered system, on average, our buses could run 2/3 full. So a normal 77 passenger bus, we could put 50 students on a bus. So we're providing more space between students, but not every other seat, not one per seat.
Okay.
Okay.
What about, is there going to be an extra bus aid or anything just to make sure the kids do have their masks on or aren't touching each other?
That is an item that we have discussed, but it has not been finalized on that. The expectation, again, this is where the partnership that we're going to need from the parents is we have to reiterate to students that they have to wear the mask. If students refuse to wear a mask, if students do not pass the screening, they will not be allowed on the bus.
Okay.
So that's why the importance of any student 12 and under have an adult there, because if they're refused entrance on the bus, we want to make sure there's an adult there that can take that student home. If a student is 12 and over and they're refused entry on the bus driver will call the family before that bus leaves and say, Johnny, the numbers that we have in the emergency contact, Johnny has been refused on the bus because he refused to wear a mask or has a temperature over 100, and the student will be sent home.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Other questions?
Yes, I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I know you guys have probably discussed this, but has there been any decisions on these younger kids in elementary school, and if it goes virtual, if we have to go virtual, them not actually being able to sit in front of a computer all day? What is the talk with these kindergartners, these first graders, how that would look? Would that look something like when we ended last semester or last year, and it was kind of like you had to do these things and we had to send in pictures every day, or what would that look like?
For the younger kids, particularly K1, 2, and I'll just use that frame because it could also affect 3rd and 4th. Again, the expectation is that they're available in phase 3, which is the first phase. They're available during a school day. It doesn't mean they're going to be online the entire time sitting in front of a computer for 7 hours. And I don't know if you were part of when I kind of gave just a broad overview of Mrs. Ranger. They may be on and off. If we are in phase 1 or 2, because of the virus would be at a point where, and I'm going to go by with what was done in the previous shutdown. Any future executive orders might be different, but if we follow what was previously done, we limited the number of staff that were allowed in a building to no more than 10 teachers at a time. So if we're in phase 1 or 2, the day is going to look different based on the teachers. So for instance, and I'll go back to Mrs. Ranger. Mrs. Ranger's class may only be meeting during the window of 8 to 10. And then after that might be activities she's given students to work on, but during that window. We recognize that the more severe the virus is, the more things are going to get shut down in our community, businesses and stuff like that, which will force parents to be working from home also. So part of our plan is in reducing the schedule. And again, I'm making the premise that the governor's executive order allows us to reduce the school day. Because as of today, if a student is virtual, I have to account for 180 days and 1,098 hours of instruction. The legislator and governor have not changed that as of August 8th at 11:15. So I'm making the premise that if we're in shutdown, we're in virtual mode, phase 1, 2, or 3, the executive order allows us to reduce time, because particularly if we're in phase 1, there are going to be more families that are going to be forced to work from home. And now we're competing with mom and dad trying to help a student at home, the student schedule. So the day is going to get reduced in phase 1 compared to phase 3 and phase 4. And it may be in phase 1, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday are the activities that have been assigned for students to do. And teachers have like a help hour or a almost like in office hours, that if there's any issues, I'm available during this time to help students and so forth.
Okay.
That is the plan for phase 1, 2, and 3. I mentioned a letter of agreement with our teachers union. We've got a plan that we conceptually have agreed to. We're just now putting it in writing to all agree to that.
Gotcha. And then so if in phase 4 and you were to choose the virtual, you would be expected to make sure that they are sitting in front of that computer and they are doing what they're supposed to, that like they're in the classroom at that age as well, correct?
The expectation they're available. Now, again, the teacher may say, for the next hour, we're doing centers. Shut down your computer and you can do this or play.
Okay.
When the teacher's done, they take recess breaks or when they do lunch. An elementary lunch in kindergarten, even though they have officially a 30-minute lunch period, is probably more like 45 to 50 when you get kids ready for lunch, get them back in the room, and get them ready to start instruction. So those times, kids will be checking out.
Yeah.
The difference between our virtual and other districts' virtual is our virtual students are part of the classroom. They're interacting with the teacher and the students in our classroom to remain, so that as a parent, you have the ability to go virtual or in person very seamlessly. Okay?
Thank you.
No problem. Other questions?
Yes, I had a question about if a child is going in person, are you guys still offering the childcare and latchkey before and after school?
Childcare and latchkey will still be offered before and after school. There would be, again, screenings before students walk into the building. Now, where childcare is and the previous entrances are all going to be different because we're starting construction on the elementary additions, and they're actually getting ready to put the fencing up. They've closed some of the entrances and built new hallways through classrooms, that new temporary fire exits. So all of that will be in the welcome back packet on the that will go out the 24th, but we will still offer childcare before and after school.
And let's say I wanted to start virtually and then switch over after the first 5 weeks. I would be eligible to still enroll in the child care after school program?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
The beauty about being virtual or in person is you are a Richmond student. So for high school and middle school students, if you are a virtual student, you are still eligible for all the things that an in-person student, clubs, athletics, you can still participate in those activities, whether you're virtual or in person. And if you are starting virtually and moving to in person, you can use the child care when you come back for in person.
Thank you.
Other questions?
I have a question. For families who choose in person, and let's say we're still in phase 4, if for some reason we do, have to quarantine or whatnot, and we go to virtual learning, let's say the whole class goes to virtual learning, will there be a little bit more flexibility as to when maybe the students can complete their work? Because we're choosing in person because there's 2 working parents. So if we now have to quarantine, I still have to work, but I've got 2 kids who need to go to school too. So will there be a little more flexibility when you're forced to go virtual?
If it is a forced virtual, there is 100%. We have to be flexible. This is an option that nobody has a choice in, and we got to figure out how we're going to make it work. And I believe that's where the relationship with the staff to make sure, hey, if you have an 8th grader and they have 7 classes because the middle school has 7 periods, make sure those teachers know, we're going to do everything we can to help our child virtually, but you also have to recognize we are working too, and so we can't always be there with our child at that time. And I don't think there's a staff member in this district that doesn't recognize that. I mean, this is a unique situation that we all are living with, and I think we have to be accommodating for families to ultimately what's in the best interest of the child. And that's where some staff members even they have the ability that they could tape record their lessons. So if, for instance, mom and dad are working and they can't get to it till 7 o'clock at night when dinner's done and everything's ready, now mom and dad can sit down with them, they have the ability to record the lesson or watch the recorded lesson.
Okay, and then if and when that does happen, do you expect to go virtually like the next day? Like what's the turnover expectation?
At this point, I have no idea. It's going to be on the governor's order. If, for instance, it happened like in March, at 11 o'clock on March 12th, she notified us that Monday the 16th, all schools were shut down. I would anticipate again, this is just from previous experience, that it's going to happen similar. There's going to be an announcement that says on Monday, this is effective, or at the end of the day on Thursday, this is effective. And so as soon as we get that from the governor, or the legislators could, I guess, take action and approved by the governor, we will notify parents that this is we're going virtual. And that's why the rollout that we've done with getting virtual students ready prior to school. The first week of school, training all kids K-12 on all the system, and then doing the Meet the Teacher Night Blue Devil Days using the systems that we're going to use, I think is going to help everybody in a seamless transition. I'm not naive to say it's not going to be challenging. It's not going to be disrupting family lives and so on. I 100% recognize that. But we will let you know as soon as we are required to go virtually. Other questions?
I have a question about preschool.
Yes.
In the past, it has been play-based and learning to socialize. Can you tell us what preschool classroom is going to look like now?
Great question. I didn't know if I would have any preschool parents. On the website, there is a section called What In-Person and Virtual Would Look Like for Preschool.
Okay.
So preschool, again, in person, we're asking similar things that a K-12 student would be required. Second home. GSRP students ride the bus, so we would do the self-screening there. They have to wear a mask on the bus if we're walking. In the classroom, we eat meals in the lunchroom, and so forth. So this is all, it's very similar to in-person K-12. For virtual preschool, they are not expected, if a preschool is a 3-hour block, and let's assume for sake of discussion, 7:50 to 10:50, a virtual student is not going to be required to be part of there for 3 hours. If you're a paid tuition-based preschool or GSRP, there's going to be blocks of time set by the teacher, like it was in the spring, where, okay, this time between 8 and 8:20, we're going to do a literacy activity, log into, we're going to use Microsoft Teams. It's going to be much more restrictive because there are no pupil accounting rules for preschool. Now, if the state allows us to have more flexibility with a distance learning virtual option, which is what we're offering K-12 with our lower L, then we're going to institute it, because I will be the first, along with I think every teacher, having a 5-year-old sit in front of a laptop from 7:50 to 2:50 is not good.
Right.
And that's why we're trying to build it so there are breaks in the day that they can step away, take a break, and then come back and rejoin their class. But on the website, it talks about virtual. Attendance is not required. It's strongly urged. For preschool families, this would be in their packet that they're going to get. These are the new expectations for preschool going forward for a preschool setting. So we could move preschool from phase 4 to phase 3. And if we are in phase 3, then everybody in preschool would be virtually.
Okay.
The expectations for preschool is laptops and Wi-Fi is provided by the family. If there is a unique situation where they do not have a laptop or they do not have Wi-Fi, we may have resources to be able to give preschool students. The current Wi-Fi devices and laptops are right now allocated for K-12, but with the purchase we made last year, we believe right now we would have enough to help families in preschool with laptops if they need a laptop. Other questions?
I have a question for what recess looks like for the elementary. Like, are they still going to have the recess like they used to have?
Recess will be scheduled so that no more than 2 classrooms are outside at a time at recess. So at the beginning of the year, when the teachers officially come back August 31st, part of the day is, okay, first grade teachers, this is normally your recess time. We got to have no more than 2 classrooms out there. The plan has K-5 students trying to remain as a cohort, and only those students are together. So for instance, when first grade goes into the lunchroom to have lunch, each teacher's class will have a designated assigned section that they are to sit in. And those tables will be spread out so you can kind of define the 4 first grade sections. And the reason why we're doing that is if someone tests positive in one classroom, it doesn't mean that we're going to have to close the classrooms in the other one, but we can confine it to that classroom and be able to address those issues. So for outside recess, it would be, okay, Mrs. Ranger's class is over here, Mrs. Dorsey's class is over here, and that may have to be on a rotation basis so that kids get to play on the different equipment all year. But it's much more scheduled. It is not a open the door and it's a free reign for the kids to go run and play. It's going to be a little more structured, but they'll have the ability to get outside, run, play, as well as the middle school 4th and 5th graders. Other questions?
Can I just follow up on that recess question? I know that in the plan where it says that, there might be 2 classrooms at a time. Because of 2 classrooms being out there, will they be required to wear a face covering since it's more than 1 class?
The expectation is that they're assigned areas, so the one class is staying together in one area of the playground, and on the other end of the playground would be the other. So for instance, and I'll use middle school for example, maybe Mrs. Monroe's class has access to the playground equipment during that short time, and on the first day, Mr. Hooks's class is playing somewhere else. Maybe it's on the field or and so forth. On the next day, they might flip-flop, and now Mr. Hook's class. Between recesses, we have disinfecting spray bottles that we will have staff go out there and spray down and disinfect the playground equipment. Again, I'm not going to say that it's 100% that we're going to be able to eliminate any virus, but we're going to do everything we can to minimize it or try to not have it. So in your answer on will they be required, as long as they're staying in cohorts, they aren't required. They just have to be in the cohort groups. And we will have, if masks do not work with students, we did purchase face shields for students so they could use that also.
So they will have to wear the masks outside?
They have to wear them outside to get outside and get from point A to point B. But if they're outside in their area, like this playground right now is only Mrs. Monroe's class, and over here on this side of the playground is only Mr. Hooks' class, and they're not mingling, then they would not have to because they're with their group. But if there's a mingling, they have to wear the mask. And that's what's defined as the common area. After recesses, all kids are going to be encouraged, wash your hands, put the hand sanitizer, going back in the classroom, put hand sanitizer back on your hand, just kill any viruses that might be on your hand. And again, there are certain students that have medical issues regarding hand sanitizer or mask. We deal with those individually, and that's where the contact point would be the building principal, Mrs. Lashbrook, who's the director of student support service. We would accommodate and adjust for those unique cases.
Did we get like lanyards or like something where they can attach like the mask onto it? Because if they're going to be taking them on and off all the time, like at lunchrooms and things like that, I see just like gloves and hats and stuff. Especially the younger kids are going to be losing them like crazy. We
will look into it. On a lanyard, the only thing we'd have to have is a detachable lanyard. So if it gets caught, it prevents it. Doesn't choke any student. It breaks in the back of the lanyard. So, but I will look into that. I think that's good suggestion.
I have a question. What about pictures for student IDs and for their cards? How are you going to work that out?
At this point, I do not have an answer for you on that one, because right now our dates were in the evening with a school photographer, and we have not addressed that. So I have to get back to you on school pictures.
And then for 9th graders entering into the school system who don't know the layout of the school, how are they going to know where to go on the first day of class?
There is been brief discussion. That's on our list. What we've done as an administrative group and really listening to teachers is we've started creating a running list of all the logistics we have to. That is on the list. The details have not been worked out. We've got a couple ideas about doing it by class, whether, you know, all ninth graders have a social studies class. Maybe during that hour, that group of kids is going around, getting a tour of the building, understanding where to go. We got to work those logistics out, but that is another one that is on the to-do list that we will have worked out before the welcome back packet goes out on the week of the 24th.
And for just one more question, as the coach for robotics, if we were to start this up again, coaches have to take the temperatures of the kids, and is there a log that we have to keep for the school?
If for right now the coaches in the sports team take the temperature, and we have an Excel log that monitors what's been done. Currently under phase 4, nobody's allowed in the building. So right now we'd have to get to phase 5 for extracurricular activities to operate in the building. But if they do, in phase 5, we're still doing those screening checks to monitor and try to prevent if someone's starting to have symptoms and they may not realize others from getting that. So it would be a similar process for academic coaches, that you'd have to have a roster. Because here's the reason why is if we have a case, and it's in the plan in the back, if we have a case of a positive COVID-19 of a student, we have to go back and figure out where that student has been and what students that person has been in contact with. So for instance, every class will have an assigned seat roster. So if student A was in first hour and tested positive, I will know as an organization who sat around student A in first hour, who sat around student A in second hour, who sat around third hour. So now I can take those kids who were within 15 feet or within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, and I can start saying, okay, these are possibly exposed to COVID-19. And those kids in each class may have to self-quarantine. And it may not be the entire class. It may be just the kids around them. Now, what that does is it creates a domino effect. So if student A was tested positive and the student next to him tested and they were positive, now I got to go to the students that were around that student to start narrowing it down. So every classroom will be required to have an assigned seating chart. Students will have a designated, they can pick where they want, probably originally in the lunchroom, but once it's decided, that is where they're going to sit in the lunchroom going forward. So that if there's a positive case, I know what students were around that student in the lunchroom within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just wondering when we can expect Blue Devil Days and for the high school students to get their schedules, elementary school students to find out who their teachers are.
The week of the 24th will be a welcome back packet that goes out like we've done in previous years. So it will be for elementary school, you'll get your teacher assignment. At high school, we will give you, normally you got your schedule at Blue Devil Days. We will be giving your schedules during the week of the 24th. So the first probably would be Power School would be open up. Most kids are going to know their schedule before they get it in the mail. But probably if you're like me as a parent, that was my paper copy that I kind of relied on to remember the order of my child's classes. But that will come out the week of the 24th.
Thank you.
And my guess is it's going to be mailed out probably in the mail on the 25th, 26th. It actually gets deposited in the post office. And the only reason why is the 17th is the secretary's official day back. They'll be starting to put the packets. We have all the students that we may have received a request for records that are leaving the district, and we'll have all the students that we have who registered. I mean, yesterday I was in the building and I took 6 registrations just here yesterday, so we have to get them in the system. And once everybody's in the system, then we can issue the schedule and issue that. So it will probably be more likely in the mail on the 26th.
Will virtual students still be able to partake in specials classes? And how will that be handled for things like art and gym?
It's a great question. For the K-5 who have specials, the virtual students would be part of their regular classrooms, and I'll just use Mrs. Walters at this point. So when Mrs. Walters' class goes to gym, or art, or STEAM, or music, or computers, the student at home would log out of Mrs. Walters' class and log into the specials teacher's class. So if Mrs. Shannon has materials for the student to do, we would provide those materials ahead of time so the student has them at home. What we're anticipating is for virtual students on the week of the 31st, when you come in, I think elementary will be September 2nd. You're going to get a packet of stuff. You're going to get a packet of stuff from the art teacher. Say, okay, these are the supplies you're going to need for art if you're a virtual student. For the STEAM teacher, some of them it's going to be a little more challenging and test our creativity. You know, when you look at PE, because PE may start in the gym room, the classroom, the gymnasium, but we'll move outside weather permitting, because that's in our plan that PE classes are outside weather permitting. So yes, the students will participate with the specialist classrooms.
The link that students receive for Blue Devil Days, is that the active link that they will use throughout the year for that classroom?
The link they received during Blue Devil Days.
So that we can
in other words, to
stream.
log into the first hour, second hour, third, or whatever the Mrs. Ranger's class all year.
Correct.
The Microsoft Teams allows you to create one link, and you can put it over multiple days so that you only have to worry about one link. The expectation when teachers are coming back and kind of putting things together is, and I'll use Mrs. Ranger. Mrs. Ranger here's the link, kind of like on a Word doc. Here's the link for Mrs. Ranger. Here's the link for Mr. Finley. Here's the link so it's all in one area that parents have access to. And that would be uploaded into Schoology, so it's a quick reference for parents. But yes, the link can be set up so you don't have a different link every single day.
Okay. And then once again, so that I'm clear, as of right now, the plan, you have no choice to not have your child videoed or recorded or audio if they choose if they choose at school learning. There's no classroom that will be, for privacy issues, having your child not videoed.
The parent, you will get a notice that says it is possible. The camera is to be on the teacher. That's the intent. But as the camera moves, or a student who's normally sitting pops up and stands and is sitting on their leg in a chair, it is possible that as that camera is moving, it's going to capture a student's face or top of their head.
And the audio on the teacher's mic, that picks up the audio of all the classroom students. For example, if the teacher calls on a student to answer a question or read a paragraph, the children at home can hear that.
The audio on
Correct?
the mic, the teacher has to be within around 6 feet of the student talking. When we did the test, the presenter was at the front of the classroom, and I stood on the side wall of the classroom. And as long as I'm talking in a normal projected voice, the audio will pick up. But if I'm in the back of the classroom, and our classrooms are about 32 by 32, it doesn't pick up. In the elementary, we have the ability to have individual microphones. So one of the things that we talked about was having like a microphone on a selfie stick, if you will. So if we needed to capture a discussion and a student was not by the teacher, they could either come up to the microphone, or the teacher could hold a selfie stick with the microphone attached to capture the voice. But as long as you're within about 6 to 8 feet and you talk in your normal voice, the microphone the teacher wears picks up so the students at home can hear that conversation.
Okay.
Now the teacher also has the ability to mute the mic. So let's say, and we have it. Sometimes we have a student that has I'm going to reference it as a meltdown or a problem. The teacher has the ability to, what we're calling safe mode, press a button on the, it's basically a remote control that controls the camera. The camera would go to a predefined spot in the class that says, we will be right back, or, you know, sometimes it's often doing a commercial break here, go take a bath and wash your hands. The teacher turns off the microphone so they can deal with the student that's having an issue in the classroom. And so the students at home would not hear or see that. If a teacher is giving, okay, it's center time, and okay, I want you to do this, the teacher can move that camera to a predetermined spot that just says, here's center, these are the activities you can do, and turn off the microphone so the students at home can't hear what's going on, and the students in the classroom can't hear what's going on at home. So that is 100% controlled by the teacher and how they operate their classroom.
Okay. Yeah, I'm more concerned about the privacy issue. I think this is an excellent plan for if we go back down to stage 3, very seamless. I also applaud the teachers. It seems like a lot for them to juggle just in general, dealing with meltdowns, and then have to also remember to go mute a camera or something like that. So I applaud them for juggling all this. Thank you for all your efforts.
I will say our teachers are beyond talented and beyond what I ever anticipated. They are phenomenal in how they have approached it. They have gone through this whole process with how do we give the best learning environment to kids outside of them actually being there. And so with that, I can anticipate we're going to have some bumps in the road. We're going to have some, the teachers got to get used to turning off a microphone for that first week. We're going to have those. And I think if we continue to work together as a community, as a partnership, we will have something here that our kids are going to learn and continue learning and not be affected by this pandemic. And think about it, they've been out of school on September 8th, almost 6 months. They have not been in the school setting. Thank you for your question.
Right.
Any other questions?
Yeah, thank you for your time.
I have a question. When is the first day of school?
First day of school is September 8th. It's a Tuesday. It's the Tuesday after Labor Day.
Okay, and then they have like their virtual meet the teacher stuff after that or before that?
Our plan is the week before to train and get students and parents ready to interact with classes on day 1.
Okay.
All meet the teacher for both in-person and virtual will be the week of September 14th, the following week. But it will be virtual for all.
Okay.
Right now in phase 4, we cannot have large groups in the building. It's not allowed.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
I have a few questions. So regarding the Meet the Teacher, I do get why you're doing that, you know, the week after school starts to get everybody acclimated with the new technology, if we would have to go back to that. But is there a way to do a Zoom meeting with the teachers and just the students that will be in their classrooms so they have a chance to meet them before the very first day of school by chance?
I will write that down because that might be something that we plan for when the teachers come back, designating a block of time in that week of August 31st through the 1st or September 1st and September 2nd when they're doing training. You know, I'll write it down and we'll talk about it as the administrative team and teachers and see if this is something that would be a benefit. Because I know from a teacher perspective, not knowing or not seeing the kids the very first day, because kids walking in the first day, it's scary. They don't know who their teacher is. They don't know where their classroom is, especially the younger grades. And if we could try to alleviate that as much as possible, we will. So I'll write it down and talk to the administrator about that.
Okay, thank you. I think that would make a huge difference for the kids going in. I mean, already they're going to be nervous with everything going on and all the changes, and especially the 4th graders going to the middle school, you know, having not had the chance to do a tour and all that. So I think that would be really beneficial, actually. So I appreciate you looking into that. And then another question is kind of random, but with the use of the sanitizers constantly, I know just recently there was an FDA, they released a warning about a large list of sanitizers that had contained, I think it was methanol or something, which was pretty toxic. So are you guys aware of this, and are you making sure that the sanitizers being purchased are not on that list?
We are aware of the list of concerns with certain sanitizers and the chemicals. All the ones that we purchase are not on that list.
Okay. And then also another to do with the cleaning, just because I know they're probably, I don't know, the chemicals that you're using, I know they have to be approved to sanitize throughout the day. Have you guys also looked into the safety of those? I mean, are you guys trying to purchase ones that are more friendly, more natural as much as possible? Or
There's two. I'm going to answer this in two ways. Number one, there's a series of disinfectants that are provided by our custodial company, ABM, the district contract for custodial services, and in that contract, they provide paper towel, cleaning, toilet paper, etc. Their chemicals they purchase have gone under their scrutiny, and I have a list of what those chemicals are that I'm actually going to be adding on, because that was a question in one of the parent meetings about a week ago. Could we get the ingredients or the makeup of that? So they purchase that. Our ask of them is that they protect kids, that they are not, and everything I've been given is yes, it is the least abrasive but does the job, if you will. I don't know if that's the right way to say it. The stuff that we purchase, the only chemical the district purchases would be Clorox 360 for the sanitizing machines, which I do have that sheet that I'm going to post. And then the solution that we would be putting in sprayers, kind of pump sprayers to disinfect playground equipment, much like they do if you go to Costco or Sam's and they're spraying down shopping carts and so forth. The same message would be done for not only playground equipment, but outside benches that kids or staff may be using, or athletic equipment that we're going to have to disinfect. That is going to be, again, it's as mild of an abrasive as possible, but yet it meets the standard. So I can post those I'll have a section on this. Give me a couple days and I'll get it up there.
Okay, thank you very much.
The other thing I did just thinking out loud, and it is written in the plan, and this is not something that we do differently, but the wipes and spray bottles or paper towel, the expectation is when students are leaving their classroom, they're leaving a computer desk, they're wiping down the stuff that they touch. So if I'm at a computer lab and I'm on the keyboard, and we have purchased dividers to go between each computer, so that there is a barrier, because it's not 6 feet, but it's closer, that the teacher would provide them either a wipe from the gallon, or if it's in the classroom, that mild disinfectant that students are allowed to use, and they're given a paper towel to wipe down their stuff before the next student is. And that is also written into the plan. That's the only way we're going to be able to, because we only have, at the secondary level, we only have 5 minutes between classes, and we could not get into every class. And so the student part of the plan is they're wiping down their stuff. We're doing all the common areas, and then when class are in session, all the lockers and everything, but they're doing their stuff.
Is the first day of school a half a day or full day that whole week? Is it?
The first day of school is a half a day, and the next 3 are scheduled to be full days. And just as a reference, if you go to the main district webpage site, there's a link here for the 2021 school year. If you click on it, it gives you the light blue are half days, the dark blue are full days, and the areas in white are no school. Again, this still has Blue Devil days listed the 31st, so we'll be changing that this week once we get the letter of agreement signed with the teachers. But the first day is a half day, and then full days from that point forward.
I have another question pertaining to the board meeting for Monday.
Yes.
Is that going to be virtual?
Yes.
Okay.
Board meetings are still virtual, so there is a link on the website that you can just click from the posting notice on the website to go to the Zoom meeting virtually.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I have a question. My son received services with Miss Katie for speech,
And if we go virtual, what is the expectation for those services? Are those still going to be provided virtually? I know in the spring we were kind of stuck and it wasn't, but I feel like he would be losing services if we go virtually and we don't get those virtual options for his speech.
If any student, whether they receive special education services such as speech or resource room, Title I services or 31A at-risk services, if they are virtual, they are receiving the same. They are receiving their services. What will happen is, if you are virtual, the people that are involved with your child's support services will review with you the plan to make sure what's written in the IEP can be done virtually. There may be a case, and I can't even give an example off the top of my head, that something's written in the IEP that virtually can't happen, or may require a student who's virtually to come in to get that services. And maybe that's more of a PT, physical therapy or whatever.
Right.
Maybe not, but the expectation, whether I'm virtual or in person, the IEP is followed and the services and required minutes are being followed.
Okay, so he would get virtual, like we've been doing video visits over the summer with his private speech therapist, but we would get that option to have video visits if which it is accommodatable for speech, that would happen.
I would say this: the speech teacher, you, and whoever else are going to have a meeting at the beginning once you choose virtual. And if you guys all agree that this is the way we're going to provide the speech service and it's virtual, that's the way it's going to be provided. It's the team making a decision. If we can do it that way, we're going to do it that way. But we want to make sure that there's nothing in services that prevent us, or we need to rethink how we provide the services. So based on what you said to me, I would expect those services to be virtual.
Okay, yeah, because we're choosing in person. I mean, he's in preschool, so we're doing in person, but if we get, to stage 1, 2, or 3 where we are forced to go virtual, is that an option that speech will be virtual, as opposed to in the spring we were just emailed documents and said, this is suggested what you should do with your kid this week. I would prefer to have something.
I will say this: since schools closed down last year, the guidance we have received from the state regarding students with IEPs or special circumstances is a lot more clear. So we are ready to go if we have to provide those services virtually, whether we're forced to by phase 3 or parents opt to in phase 4 and phase 5.
Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, I know that you've touched on this briefly here and there, but how do the notifications for a positive test versus potential exposure work? And then how does that affect deciding whether or not to quarantine a student, class, or school, as you had mentioned? Like I can see, that's a huge scope, but do we have an actual procedure in place for it?
Yep. Let me, I'm going to share my screen for you, and I will show you exactly where to find that. All of these procedures have been outlined and provided to all 21 districts by Macomb County Health Department. So I'm going to go to the plan, which again is from the website, and it is in the appendix at the very end. The plan is about 117 pages, so around 112-ish. I hope nobody's not. Oh, there it is. Special ed, right there. So this outline, these are procedures that the health department is requiring districts to follow. So for instance, if we have a possible COVID case in students, we have to document as a building, student's name, when we identified it was a possible case, what symptoms, who were they in contact with someone prior, and it defines, in the past 14 days, has someone been positive? And if it was positive, were you within 6 feet for at least 15 minutes? If it was just passing, it's not in their protocol. If you currently have a cough, maybe you have allergies, we're looking, is it a new cough? Is it something different? So we go through this. Then it says if they exhibit this and have no close contact with any school, if at school or anything, the student should be sent home. The student may return after 24 hours after the result. If the student exhibits any of these symptoms and has close contact, so both of these, if at school we send them home, the student should be evaluated by a healthcare provider. If at school, the student should be required to wear a face mask and wait in an isolation area from teachers and other students. We have to notify the health department that we have a possible case in the student. And the health department will then at that point begin guiding, are we quarantining a class? Are we quarantining just the students that have been in contact? Are we shutting down a whole school? There's in the appendix what we have, the procedures to follow for staff. If I have a staff member who's possible. If I have confirmed cases. You'll see here, if it is a confirmed case, we will be notifying the families that we have a confirmed case of COVID. We do not notify families if it is a possible case. But if there's a confirmed case, you will get notified as a parent. We have to follow federal and state privacy laws regarding and HIPAA regarding the student and staff information. But the health department would be working with them because now they're going to have to start looking at contact tracing, which we're going to be part of. So as you look here, you see at an elementary school, is it a self-contained classroom? At a middle school, is it close contact in other classroom? That's why the assigned seating charts are going to be needed.
Yeah.
Here's a contact of someone who has been contacted who tested positive. These are the protocols, where they have to be quarantined. Again, it's talking about 14 days. And then it goes to the protocols of how we return staff or students back to the school. So to answer your question, we are following the Macomb County protocols, and I personally have a conference call with them every week along with the other superintendent to get the latest update and any changes to that protocol. The recommendation to the board would be to allow, once they approve it, to allow me to adjust it based on any changes that the county would have, so I don't have to keep going back as they change it and learn about the virus more. So, did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing out exactly where it was so I can read through it.
Our goal in this whole process is to make sure you as parents have everything that we are planning to do so that you can make an informed decision. And I will say this, if you have any hesitation about your child coming back to school, I would register them for the virtual option. And I say that because I don't want the anxiety of a child or the nervousness of a parent to prevent students from reaching their fullest potential in this environment that we're living in. We have built a system that allows you as a parent and the teachers to have some flexibility of some points in time that kids can go seamlessly back and forth into the classroom. And I think this is the piece about this system that is 100% unique about Richmond. No other district has this ability to do this seamless move.
Well, I think I'm on the opposite end of my concern with both of us working and stuff like that is that they get taken in quarantine for an inadequate reason. You know, if somebody's brother, sister got it and then all of a sudden their class is quarantined, that was more my concern. So,
and I think that's important because one thing that like I said, those class rosters of where kids are at, if we get it, there's protocol we have to follow and start identifying who was around that student within 6 feet. It doesn't necessarily mean everybody in that classroom is going to be quarantined. You know, there's a potential here that I have to quarantine a teacher and I have a sub in the classroom, and if the teacher's able, could still remote in and teach the class, but they have to be quarantined. So there's a whole aspect on staff, a bus driver. I will tell the community this, and I'll share it with the board on Monday. If we have to start quarantining bus drivers, the likelihood that we're going to have to start canceling bus runs is pretty high. Districts all over are in need of bus drivers. We have enough to run what we need for the school year, but we don't have very many subs. If you know anybody who is willing to wants to be a sub bus driver, we will take their application and train them. But that is a possibility that if we don't have drivers, that I could be forcing families virtually or to provide their own transportation if I have to quarantine a bus driver. And again, we will follow these protocols outlined by the health department.
Wait, what does Jessica cover?
Okay, I have another
Any other-
question.
Yep.
I am going to be doing my child through virtual. The question that I have is, I know you have a 5-week time frame that you have to stay in, either virtual or in person. My question being, what if my child is really struggling with virtual and just having a lot of issues, and it's frustrating for them, frustrating obviously for me as a parent? Is there a way to get them into school before the 5-week time frame, or is that not even a possibility?
There is nothing that we can't do. I'll put it that way. My response would be, that would be the conversation you would have with the principal and the teacher to figure out, okay, they know, you guys know your child best. And so if there is a decision, that would be based on the teacher, the principal, and the parent working together in figuring out what the best environment for the child is. Because we also recognize that you could be virtual now, and a week into it, this doesn't necessarily apply to you, but you have to go back to work and you have no childcare option. And now what do we do? So we have to have the ability to make address extenuating circumstances.
Yep, fluid situation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I have another question regarding the cameras in the classroom. What kind of security measures do you have in place to make sure they're not hacked or anything like that?
The cameras in the classroom are not tied to any network. It is a camera that's mounted in the ceiling. It's a USB cord that goes from the camera directly to the teacher computer. It's literally an unplug at the teacher if you don't want the camera on or just off. It is not part of our tied into our camera system that are in the hallways and the exterior of the building. And it's 100% controlled by the teacher. It's basically, if you imagine a remote control for your TV that's got 1 through 9 with the button 0. There's 99 programmable spots for the teacher. Not that they're going to need programmable, but you can press 1 and the camera automatically moves to the front of the room. Press 2, it automatically moves to the map. Press 3, it automatically moves to the rocking chair in the classroom. And so the teacher has on-off capability. So it is not part of our network at all.
Yeah. Mr. Walmsley, just out of curiosity, can we expect to see pretty much the same teaching staff, or do you have teachers that have opted not to come back to in-person learning?
As of today, I have no teachers that have expressed a concern about coming back to school and giving me any type of documentation and so forth. So I'm expecting the staff, and I've had probably at least twice a week conversations with the union leadership, Mrs. Ranger and Mr. Kudos regarding from Local 1, to be beyond it, because other districts are having an increased number of staff that are requesting a leave of absence. We don't have any, so we are expecting all of them. Other than the couple that retired, and we did have one resignation over the summer that we had to shuffle some staff, but no, we're expecting all the staff to be back.
That's awesome. And as a follow-up to that, I know that substitute teacher shortages, everyone's dealing with that. Are you anticipating an issue in Richmond if we have teachers that end up having to quarantine?
What we are planning on doing is at every building, contracting to have 3 substitutes in every building from day 1 through a point in time, and I haven't decided that yet, but let's assume it's the end of November, so that we have staff on call ready to go if we have to deal with quarantine, if we have to help deal with a student in a possible case. If anything, they can help us keep the building sanitized and monitor hallways and so forth. But our plan is to put 3 substitutes right off the bat, that if teachers call in, these 3 are the first to fill the vacancies.
That is amazing. Thank you for doing that.
And to go along with the substitute question, and I didn't address this, but our plan is once I know from EDG staff the list of subs that have signed up for Richmond, they will get notified to be able to come to training. And I don't remember the dates off the top of my head. So substitutes know how, if a teacher's logging in remotely, or they have their lessons on Schoology, but the substitute can log into Schoology and run the classroom as if the teacher was there. So we are providing that training for substitutes. And I don't remember the dates off the top of my head, so forgive me on that one. Any other questions? Well, I would like to end by thanking you for spending your Saturday with me. Again, if you have any questions, email me, contact the principal, call. We are here to help you. Together, we're going to have a successful school experience for students. So I appreciate your time, and have a great day. Thank you.